another problem. Okay, so we've been talking about Biden, but obviously he's no longer on the ticket. It's going to be Harris. And so the question is going to be, with all of this power, if Kamala Harris wins, is she going to be powerful enough and strong enough intellectually and even constitutionally, if that's a word I can use, to stand up to whether it's Putin, Xi Jinping, Netanyahu, Zelensky, to hold fast to the interest of the United States? I'm going to give you a hint here. This is an interview from almost 2 years ago by Andrea Mitchell and Kamala Harris. And watch the very specific questions that are asked, and then we'll just watch the rest.
Yeah.
This is becoming a war of attrition. Doesn't Vladimir Putin have more ammunition, more artillery to outlast Ukraine?
Well, you're right, Andrea, that Vladimir Putin decided, unprovoked, to start this war. And he has the ability to end it by stopping and getting out.
He's shown no sign of giving up or negotiating.
Well, that is a part of why we will make sure that we do everything possible within our power to strengthen Ukraine's position on the battlefield, so that if and when there are negotiations, Ukraine will be in the strongest position in a negotiation.
Will the American people be willing, especially with a Republican majority now in the House, will they be willing to stand up for Ukraine and make sacrifices?
I know the American people. I know who we are. And I've seen how the American people feel about this. I've seen it traveling all over our country, to places you might not imagine, where Ukrainian flags are flying in their windows. I know the American people feel a sense of moral outrage and a sense of responsibility for our nation to stand with the Ukrainian people around these atrocities. And I'm confident in that. I'm confident in that.
Okay. Several things I want to point out about that. First of all, Andrea Mitchell asked the perfect question at the outset of that. Okay, Russia has more men, ammunition, natural resources that you mentioned here. How can Ukraine stand up against that when we can't match that? And she not only didn't answer it, but you could see she's thinking in slow motion and then starts talking about something completely different and never circle back to answer the question. And Andrea Mitchell tried to get back on there, but that's just an interview. What's going to happen when you're actually, if she should actually win, or even if Biden doesn't even make it to January, which I think is actually a possibility too. And now that she's facing a Xi Jinping or a Vladimir Putin, how is she going to stand up to that pressure?
They're going to eat her lunch. There's no soft answer I can give on this, Danny. One of the notable things that many leaders come to the table with, and left or right, is a sense of history, of understanding context. And let's face it, she's unbound by any context of any sort, because she's let go of the past, as she always tells people. And that's not a good thing, because you have to understand the past to actually establish your philosophy of how to deal with the present relating to leaders. I'm a Reagan guy. I've talked about this on your show and other shows. Bud McFarland, God rest his soul, was one of my friends and mentors. I learned how the Reagan team did things, and they always focused on understanding the deeper cultural and specific military issues of a given nation, to include leaders. And that's why Reagan was able to play Gorbachev so well. It wasn't about Russia, United States. It was about Reagan and Gorbachev. And I think that's what Kamala lacks. That Trump has. Trump has that. Trump understands how to go and do business, cut a deal. And again, Kamala doesn't. She was literally spouting the neocon talking points in that interview. Oh, we're just going to do whatever we need to. It's like, it's not that easy. And the other thing that she seemed to not understand is that Russia never gave up its fundamental control of certain elements of its economy. Now, that is to say that the Russians are a republic. They do have elections. They maintained some level of contingency and control over industry. So while we are remaining unable to produce for example, 155 millimeter artillery rounds to the level of to keep up with what Ukrainian needs. The Russians have surpassed it an order of magnitude because they always maintain some level of industrial control. So as long as you got that, they're always going to outproduce you. And Russia, even with Europe, you're never going to have the number of resources available to counter what Russia can do. Russia never gave up on having a potential to quickly switch to a wartime economy, and it's paying dividends. You didn't see her talk about that at all. She didn't talk about the human cost. But one of the things I believe, I know this may sound weird, I am fundamentally against war. I'm anti-war, having seen what damage it does to both individuals engaged in it and nations who have to come through it. There's no reason to go to war if you don't have to.
Right.
And at this point, the idea that, oh, we're just going to let attrition take its course, they're going to bleed Ukraine dry. You're going to lose a whole generation of Ukrainian men for no good reason. And I think she's just fine with that.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on that point in just a second. But the other thing from that clip that I wanted to talk about was that she's talking about, I know the American people, and they feel a sense of moral obligation to keep supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes to match our talking points here. But if you look at recent reporting, Gary, if you can bring that one from the Responsible Statecraft up, that's very recent, and maybe even been out yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. A July poll shows that a majority of American public does not support sending U.S. troops to defend Taiwan or Ukraine. And then you keep going down that list, and there's lots of other things that we're not wanting to fight. It's as though a lot of Americans agree with you that they don't want to fight wars, that they don't want wars to be fought on their behalf or to pay for them. So it seems to me that the administration is out of step with the American people as well on this point.
They are. And there's two